Let's be truthful. The cloud is so seducing because it allows us to build great things with less effort. As part of the possibilities, scalability is essential for businesses that need to ensure their resources will support unexpected demands without spending too much. Still, by considering we don't have any cloud experience, can a springboot lift and shift cloud migration scale? Let's find out in the following minutes. Hello guys, Orléando Dassi here. I am your presenter on Small. Today we are going to cover the part 2 of the cloud migration of a Spring Boot application using ElasticBeanstalk service. The part 1 had a focus on the deployment as well as clarifying or defining some terminologies. You can find the link to the series in the description below. Let's start by clarifying what scalability is all about. When you deploy your application to serve your users, it's possible that for a few occurrences, like during launches or special events, that you have peak or overload of your servers, which may lead to downtimes if you haven't built your application or your infrastructure to support the traffic growth. Two types exist. There are synonyms around, but let's stick with the following. Vertical scaling, also known as scaling up, involves increasing the resources of a single server or machine, such as adding more RAM, CPU, or storage that depend on you to improve its performance and capacity. Horizontal scaling, also known as scaling out, involves adding more machine or server to a network or cluster to distribute the workload and increase capacity while maintaining the same resources per machine. With the elasticity capability of the cloud, we will have our resources being scaled out, increasing horizontally, then scaled in, decreasing, respectively. For the other case, the whole system will be able to scale up, increase, and to scale down to decrease, all of this being handled automatically. We have another video that covers the most important cloud concept that you should know. You can take a look at the link just down in the description of the video. The scaling configurations are the condition to meet for a scale activity to launch. They can be on many natures depending on what you are measuring your infrastructure with. One could scale based on the CPU utilization, another based on the latency or the request count, and so on. There are many ways to define those scaling configurations. You can do so by using the AWS console, simply say the UI, by using the CLI as well, or even by providing some configuration directly in the source code of the application. Let's find out by looping over two of these methods together. By this stage, I believe you already have your environment up and running. If it's not the case, you have to go back to the part 1 video in which you can follow the steps to create your environment. I have done so already. So from the AWS console, it's possible for you to change the configuration for the scalability. You first have to type Elastic Beanstalk in the search area to access this page. I'm here already. So I can simply click on the environment I want to work on. On the left, I access the configuration page in which we have all those infrastructure settings. Let's access the capacity area. Over here, you can see more configuration. Some are missing because we still have to define them. We click on the edit button on the right section, in which we can first change the single instance configuration for the environment type. Since we are talking about scalability, we can't have a single instance if our desire is to scale, of course. We need to have, so we need to have a load balance infrastructure. After this change being made, we can then define the minimum instances that we want for our launch configuration and the maximum, of course. And then we can just go down to access more configuration, especially the availability zones. So if you define, for example, any tree over here, that means your infrastructure is going to be deployed by using tree AZ. in order to achieve high availability concern for your deployment. And of course, we have this cooldown setting as well. So this one only define how long it's going to take from the last scaling activity before starting the new one in order to have some kind of um, waiting time, if you can call it that way. So let's go down. We have more metric. For example, you can define the configuration to use in order to track when your infrastructure should be scaled or not. You can do so by using the CPU utilization. You even have the latency, the request count, and so on. After you define the metric, let's specify the statistic to use. I often choose the average of that metric, and for the unit, I can use the percentage. And just down, we have the upper threshold and the lower threshold. The upper threshold and the lower one are very important parameters in order to know when to scale. If, for example, you put 90% over here, that means when your instance's usage reach 90%, then it's going to add one more instance for you. And if you put 20% over here for the lower threshold, as soon as your CPU utilization reach a 20% threshold, they are going to remove one instance for you. You can even change the number of instances to add or to remove from this configuration. That depends on you. At the end, you click on the apply button to apply those configurations. But I'm not going to do so. But you have the way. Doing so from the CLI is a very simple process. But before moving into that, let me show you the source code that we are going to use for this section. You simply have to open the repository, the community repository of numericaideas. You open the AWS folder in it. You can have access to the springboot migration ElasticBeanstalk project. That is the one that we use for the part one video, and we are still going to use that for this one. So I have the source code locally already on my computer. You simply have to create one configuration file in which you are going to define all the scaling configurations. Normally, you have to create this folder called EB extension, but it should have a dot in front, so it is a hidden folder. But for this video, I haven't put a dot in it because I didn't want it to break the other stuff that we have done for the part one video. So you have to rename this folder first to put a dot in front like this. Perfect. And in the folder, we have a few configuration for the scaling configuration. They are actually the same configuration that we saw a few minutes ago from the UI. So you still have the possibility to define the availability zones, the cooldown period, the minimum size of your infrastructure in terms of the number of instances, the maximum size, the measure name. Over here, we are still using the CPU utilization, the average for the statistic, the percentage for the unit, and so on. So now, let's say you want to run this by using the CLI. You first have to create your instance as you have done during the part one video, but I changed a bit the comment that you have to use for this section. So I defined this one in the README file. So you simply have to use this comment instead, which is going from the very first step to have a load balance environment instead of the single instance one. And after this, when you are going to deploy your application by using the EB deploy command, it's surely going to pick up the configuration defined in the .eb extension folder, and everything is going to work as expected. So I shut down my previous deployment. So let's see how to do that on small. As I said before, I have a new command included over here in the README file. I'm simply going to copy that, and then I'm going to create an environment by using that command. Go. Normally, it's going to create a new environment directly enabled for load balancing. So we have a minimum number of instances over here, that is 2, and 4 for the maximum. We still have the instance type t2.micro that we are using for that, and still a database configuration for the LGS service. It's going to take a few minutes, maybe 20 or 15 minutes, and you will have your environment set up. and running as expected. After this, you can still try to update or to deploy new version of your application by simply doing eb deploy. This is going to take into consideration the eb.extension folder. That means after the deployment, you can still update the minimum or the maximum number of instances from here, and you simply deploy the app on Spawn. The previous video has more information about the step that you need to follow in order to deploy, to update your environment as you go on. So the next video is going to cover some important consideration in case you want to put this all together into a CI/CD context. I hope you will watch it. Bye for now.